Chapter 10 is about outlining your speech. And rather than using a PowerPoint and going through everything there, you can go ahead, you're going to read that chapter. Everything in there is important. Of course, the quiz is going to be based on that chapter, and it's going to be based on what I say here as well. But I thought that what might make more sense is for me to actually pull up an outline sample. This is a preparation outline sample. It is available to you in the module that's titled Resources, Speech Guidelines and Resources. So you're welcome to look at this one, download it. There's other ones in there that can help you. You'll notice that every outline has a little bit different, little bit of variation, and all the outlines that I include were very good outlines, or else I wouldn't have included them. So what we're going to do is take a look at an actual preparation outline so that we can go through all the parts. Now, and the book, it's mostly going to just focus on developing the main points. And I'm going to give you a little bit of advice here about how to go about developing your speech. Many people start with an introduction, and a speech absolutely starts with an introduction. But starting by writing the introduction is usually not the best idea. Start by working on the body of your speech. Work on your main points first. The other thing I'll say is that most people wait till the last minute, which is never a good idea, but I know that you do that. And you just go and you're like, okay, I'm going to talk about this, this, and this. And they're like, oh, she said we need some research. And then you go in, maybe you try to find something, and you try to find information that already conforms to what it is you were going to talk about. And then when you find information that maybe contradicts what you were going to talk about, you're like, oh no, now what do I do? Because now you've waited too long and now it's kind of too late. And so all of these things, this is all a building process, and coming up and getting to the point where we're actually now creating the speech, you will have had to have done some research first. And you may find when you thought about this great topic, you're like, yep, this is what I want to do. I'm going to go out, I'm going to do some research. And sometimes what you find doesn't necessarily support where you thought you were going to go. So remember, be open to go different directions. Okay, so what I'm going to show you is an entire preparation outline, every single piece of it. We're not even going to talk about some of these pieces until next week. So I'm going to spend a whole lot of time talking about the introduction, the conclusion, the transitions. But I want you to see what a full preparation outline looks like. So we start up here at the top. Informative speech topic, the death penalty, methods of execution. You also are going to have the topic of your speech on your preparation outline. This is what you're going to hand in to me. Okay. You're not going to use this preparation outline to deliver your speech. Look how many words there are on this. If you were to do that, you would read to us, and we don't need to be read to. It's not a reading class. You're going to speak to us. So after you develop this nice long preparation outline, you're going to practice from it, hence the word preparation outline, and then you're going to convert that into a keyword outline. So always going to start the speech topic. You're going to have the specific purpose. I will inform about execution methods and their processes. Okay, there's you go. You're informing, we know that. And your central idea. I want my audience to understand the history and methods of execution, including hangings, gas chamber, electrocution, and lethal injection. That one simple sentence tells me exactly what this speech is going to be about. It's not going to be about this with execution. It's not going to be about executions are right or wrong. It's going to talk about that. Okay, there we go. Those three things at the top up here, you do not say these in the speech. Those are just there as kind of your guiding factor, and for me as the grader to make sure that I see that you're focusing it. First part of your speech is your introduction. Now notice there are 4 parts. For your introductory speech, there were only 2 parts. There was the attention getter and the preview. Here, and we're going to be adding 2 pieces to it. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it because I'm going to spend a lot more time talking about it next week. But you're going to have an attention getter. Attention getter, always the first thing you do. As you start, you got to get our attention. Then you're going to have audience relevance. Why in the world does this audience want to listen to you? Why should I care about what you're talking about? You better do something to try to hook me and get me engaged in this topic. Give me some reason to listen. Credibility. How are you credible? Why do you care about this topic? Why should I listen to you? And then a preview. You're going to clearly preview. Remember, we're using that linear organization. Preview what it is you're going to be talking about. It is possible that the attention getter might be combined with either the audience relevance or the credibility. That is perfectly fine. If that happens, make sure you notice how these are labeled and underlined. Make sure that you label it that way. So attention getter / credibility. Maybe that would be the case if you were using a story about yourself to get our attention, and that would help to establish your credibility. So those are the parts of the introduction. Notice introduction, each one of those labeled. This, you're going to do the same thing with your preparation outline, the same exact thing. Now, you've told us what you're going to talk to us about. You've previewed your speech. Now you're going to transition to your first main point. This little tiny sentence is a big thing in a speech, a transition. This is what bridges the parts of your speech together. So you must write that transition in there. Now we're going to go through the body. Now, we can go back up here to the thesis, or the central idea. Either term is interchangeable. And I can see you're going to be talking about executions, hangings, gas chamber, electrocution, lethal or executions, and lethal injection. So I see here that you're going to have 4 main points. So am I seeing that? Oh, look, hanging. There you go. And there's even a 1 there. Now, let's say that was an A instead of a 1. I don't care. I personally am not going to get hung up on their 1, 2, 3, ABC, you know, or how you do any of that. But as you see here, it just doesn't look like an essay. It's not just paragraphs. It is an outline. There are main points. There are subpoints. I'm going to read through this. The subpoints support your main point. They need to do that. So let's find out. So first main point, hanging. Hanging gives me a little bit of information. It's not outlawed in the U.S. Really? I did not know that. Okay. So we have a little bit of information about hanging. Now I'll explain the process. Okay. That's the second subpoint, B, being a subpoint of hanging. So explain the process. It looks like we're going to go through. Inmate is to be weighed. A rehearsal hanging must take place. Oh, okay. I don't know who rehearses that, but okay. Okay, we've got a source. 1997 U.S. Army Manual. All right, that's a source. Notice that this particular speaker, they chose to underline and italicize that information as a source. And I see it here as well. This is something you're going to want to do. Again, next week I'm going to talk about these oral citations because they're a little tricky. This is where you're telling us where you got the information. Something that is very helpful for you as a speaker, for me as an evaluator of an outline, is for you to distinguish that oral citation somewhere. It also allows you to quickly go back and glance and say, wait, did I put that in there? And then you can find it real quickly. Okay, so we have a little bit of information about hangings, explain the process, and then I have all that. We've got the last hanging in the U.S. Okay, it tells me when the last hanging was. All right, and now I see transition to second main point. Oh, okay, I'm leaving hanging now. Okay, and let's see what this particular speaker does. She says, now that we know a little background information on hangings, I'll leave this segment with the last words of Albert Fish. I don't even know why I'm here. Okay, so this is a person who was executed. I'm not sure if this person was executed by hanging, but this was their last words. Interesting. Okay, interesting information to have in a transition. That's fine to do something like that, so long as you also in your transition have a very clear preview of where we're going. This told us where we were. Now that we have a little background information on hanging, what we just did, now let's turn our attention to the gas chamber. Okay, tells us, makes that bridge from hanging to the gas chamber. Excellent. Okay, so now we know we're going into our second main point, so let's take a look at that. Gas chamber. It's not outlawed in the U.S. That sounds similar to what I heard back here. Hanging is not outlawed in the U.S. Interesting. Okay, so we're using some parallel structure with those subpoints. Now it looks like they go on to talk a little bit about what happens with the gas chamber, cyanide gas, and how the process goes. So this is the process of executing someone in a gas chamber. So we know that it's not currently outlawed. Again, we have the process, which is exactly what we had up here for hanging. So that's good to do, to have a very similar substructure or subpoint structure. And it looks like here, C, only 11 people were executed through the gas chamber. Last chamber execution was March 1999. Okay, that is also similar to what we heard up here about hangings. And so I like how this speaker is using parallelism, using similar subpoint structure within each main point. As a listener, that makes it a lot easier to follow. It may take me a couple main points till I figure that out, but it is going to be very helpful as an audience member. Okay, we have a transition to the third main point. And again, I want to point out, notice how these oral citations are they stand out. She used italics and underlining. So we have a transition. We see here, again, she uses that, last words of somebody who was executed. Now that we've learned some background on the gas chamber process, goes into that. Now to a more common and familiar form, electrocution. Okay, told us where we just were, tell us where we're going to next. And here we go, electrocution. Notice as we're reading through this, a good idea for a preparation outline is that someone who did not develop the speech should be able to give the speech, probably not very well, but should be able to give the speech from a preparation outline. Has enough detail that we can do that. It's not just single words and something that I wouldn't know. Okay, again, I can see that this particular speaker is using a similar structure. So where it's still ought to take place, the process of how it happens, and then the last electrocution took place. Again, we had this transition here with the last words of George Apple and what he said, and then the final method I want to tell you about is lethal injection. Great transitions. Told us where we just were, had that kind of interesting information about last quote, which that you wouldn't be able to do that for every kind of topic, but for this topic that was a nice touch. And then importantly told us where we're going next. Okay, so now we've got lethal injection, similar subpoint structure. And so, where it's allowed, the process it goes through, and this particular speech was delivered on October 21st, and it just so happened there were 2 executions that were scheduled that day in Arkansas, which is some interesting information to share. Okay, so transition to the conclusion. Again, tell us we're coming to the end. Let me get this to the end and wrap this up. So as we pull the plug on this speech, that's cute. That's a little kind of play on words that you can use. Again, it doesn't work for some topics, doesn't work for every topic, but if you come up with a creative way, something that just isn't now to conclude or something like that, and still does end with last words of John Gacy, "Kiss My Ass," which is pretty interesting quote to use as we go into the conclusion. So we have that conclusion. We're going to again, we're not going to preview, we're actually going to summarize there. So we're going to summarize again what we actually said. Here's what we've looked at, here's what we've talked about. Maybe a little elaboration is always good. This is your last chance to drive that final message home from your speech, and then some memorable closer. And we don't want to make any kind of persuasive appeals here in an informative speech. We don't want to say, so what do you think? Should executions be allowed? Or, hey, maybe they shouldn't. Don't do that, because now you're putting some type of right or wrong, good or bad, do it or don't do it kind of thing on there. That would change this into a persuasive speech. Here's something simple. So which method would you choose if sentenced to death? Okay, I'm using a kind of a rhetorical question. Not bad. It gets the audience to think about something. Okay, so, and I'll let you go ahead and read through the comments. So this is what a preparation outline looks like. This is what we're talking about. So this particular speech was probably about, it was a 10-minute speech, if memory serves correctly. And so it was pretty, it's pretty wordy. Now, she did not read to us. She had good notes, had nice engaging delivery. It was an interesting topic, so it was kind of fun to listen to. Very well developed, well supported. And so this is what you're striving for when you are developing your preparation outline.